next panel is hosted by CHRISTINA, so I'm going to let you do the introductions to your panelists and the topic, but please put your hands together for our amazing panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. CHRISTINA ZHANG. I'm the CEO and founder of the METAVERSE Institute and also Vice Chairman for the United Nations International Telecommunication Union Working Group on the METAVERSE. So I'm very delighted to have our distinguished panel of speakers talking about a very important agenda, building a sustainable and inclusive Web3 ecosystem, NFTs, diversities, and ethics. So let me introduce them one by one. Our first speaker is Tris Johnson, this wonderful lady here, who I saw looks very much like Oprah, right? And she's actually an innovation tech executive, focused on helping entrepreneurs and business leaders to adopt Web3 technologies, all the way from AI, machine learning, blockchain, metaverse, IoT, and next generation Web3 platforms. So she has a very interesting career. Very delighted to have you here, Trish.
Delighted to be here. So delighted to be here. I'm going to pause and let you continue because I'm sure that we'll all be saying a lot, but you couldn't have done a more sophisticated and elegant introduction. I'm so grateful for you.
I'm already a fan of you. Okay, our next speaker is Simone Barry, and she is a pioneer figure in the intersection of crypto, fashion, culture. Look at her outfit. I was staring at her. Wow, what a gorgeous outfit. I love it.
Thank you.
And she also has done a lot of amazing things. So you have leading global fashion brands to over 200 million US dollars. That's incredible. How did you do it?
It's actually a small business.
Oh, so 200
I ran
million.
one of Walmart's largest private label businesses. So that's actually a small percentage of their global business.
This is called female leadership. 200 million US dollars is a small business. Wonderful.
I mean, in their business, it was a small business, but it was big. I did some things. It was good.
Amazing. We are so honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And our next speaker is Josh Lamont. Is that right? Yeah. And he's a co-founder and CEO of Amplinet, an international agency focusing on human-first research. I think we need a lot of that, especially with the rise of AI. Is that true?
I agree, yes.
Yeah, and he's actually really committed to promoting cross-cultural understanding and deepening human connections through inclusive research and design. So we are really delighted to have you here today, because I think diversity is beautiful.
I agree, thank you so much.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Yulia Prokonoshi. Sorry, I think your name is a little bit difficult for me to pronounce. And she is amazing lawyer at Gunnar Cook LLP with a focus on Web3, Metaverse, DeFi, and NFT projects.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Cool. Let's go straight to the exciting discussion today. So my first question to the panel is, what does Web3 mean to you? Let's go ahead with my favorite, Oprah.
You have to love this. I will tell you. Well, first, I'm over here asking for tissue. My husband, I'm like standing here like motioning. He still didn't understand what I'm saying. I'm like, what else could I do? I don't know. Ayo, you're beautiful. I thank you. I will tell you, and these are hay fever allergies that, boy, I tell you, I've been trying to correct that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
First of all, when we talk about human connection and where we're getting back to, even the opening and the introduction, you know, we see all the things that's possible for artificial intelligence in the world that we are all living and breathing. But the one thing I always say that we continue to come back to is this deep, beautiful sensing of spirit, of beautiful energy. You have that.
I eat a lot as well. That's
oh my
profession.
gosh, it is amazing.
And the lunch is delicious.
And I think you introduced yourself, but you've been doing incredible and amazing research, deep research, on a very cutting edge topic in Metaverse. And so I know that we all probably can't wait to continue connecting and for you to share the deep work you're doing, because it is extremely relevant and critical for us to do the work that we do. My world in blockchain and why Web3 or next generation web is so critical. My path is not necessarily with NFTs, with crypto, even though we invest, we had to go deep to understand the capability, because I work with a metaverse education. I sit on boards, came out of the world of Microsoft for a decade, sitting at the edge of innovation. I just got out of a presentation with holographic capability that Cisco's doing, and it's funny, that was the world that I started in at Microsoft with HoloLens and the integration of blockchain, working with the integration of all data ecosystems, including machine learning, NLP, NLU, every single way possible. So it's really interesting and exciting to see how COVID has elevated and advanced Web3 adoption in a way that I think we never, we spent years trying to get this adopted, and it was very difficult, and all of a sudden it becomes consumerized. And so the world that I deal with now with Web3 is decentralization of all ecosystems. When you think about the world of big oil and gas companies, when you think about total industries who are completely disrupting themselves in retail, banking, every industry, I don't think there's an industry I probably don't touch right now, because all of them are moving towards the next generation web world. And so I'm deeply focused on the work of how do we begin to converge and integrate these technologies.
That's beautiful. What about you, Simone?
I mean, I don't know how to follow that. That was amazing. I'm like, I need to change seats. So for me, I come from a very different background, as we noticed. I came from fashion. So I look at everything through a consumer lens, and when my exposure to Web3, I was like, this is amazing, creative, equity, all of the things, democratization of power. We can finally have our own ownership, and these were the things that I was really drawn to, because previous to running that business, I was in streetwear, and it was considered urban back then. And it was really created by amazing Black and brown creators. However, we've seen the Black community drive culture. Culture drives economies, but we haven't participated in that monetization to the level that everyone else has. So streetwear right now is $1 billion business. Most of those companies are not around. If they had the blockchain, they would have been able to participate and collaborate with their consumers and create that community that would be supporting them. So for me, I was immediately like, this is amazing. I went to my first NFT conference, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was the only one. And then I found 6 other Black women, and we were the only one in a sea of, respectfully, white crypto bros. So my company was founded, it's POC, People of Crypto Lab, on the basis that we need visible representation, accessibility for Black and brown communities, LGBTQAI, disabled, all of those that may not be seen need to be represented here, however necessary. So we bring brands into Web3 in a meaningful way through the lens of culture, diversity, accessibility. So I personally believe that we're intersecting early enough that we can fix the errors, let's say, of Web 2. We're definitely not changing over here. But as we move forward, if we do it with intentionality, we would be able to actually intersect and make a difference. My goal is that eventually when there's diversity conversations, the room fills up, because it's always the room that, for some reason, just gets the less amount. But these are really important conversations, because at the end of the day, if you're building for Web 3, the consumer that is going to be most drawn to it are those that are disenfranchised from Web 2. And who are those consumers? Black, brown, LGBTQAI, disabled. So if you're not building for that end user, good luck scaling.
Way.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's very true. What do you think?
As the queer person on the panel, I will agree with all of the things that you've said here. My perspective on Web3 is really one of optimism and excitement about how we can build the future. I have been working in the realm of UX research for the past 20 years on the web, looking at a lot of different devices and international research, and I started my company Amplinate, which is actually coming from amplify and innovate the voices of marginalized populations around the world. So we are really here to give a voice to the people that don't often get a voice in the development of software and the creation and design of software. So I'm coming from a space of that. If you missed my talk yesterday, I'm gonna briefly give you a little snippet here, because it helps frame a little bit of my perspective. And I broke it out into optimistic and pessimistic views of our human relationship with technology. And you can actually take that in aspects of the physical realm and in the virtual realm. And so depending on where you fall in the spectrum, you're going to have a different approach. And my goal for Web3 is to really understand and be aware of the paradigms that we have going into it, but also to be intentional when we decide to change those paradigms and create new ones that are going to be better.
Love that.
Beautiful.
Because we can be better.
What about you, Leah?
So I came to the Web3 from more of an advisory perspective. So I advise obviously businesses on various like legal and regulatory elements of it. But before falling into this space, I was working with a lot of Web2 businesses. And the reason why I even got into it is just because I really see Web3 as a new era in the internet, and I think this is something that have been discussed over the last 2 days, that we currently live in a Web2 era of the internet, but we're slowly but steadily moving into Web3 era, and this is what I actually see Web3 is, like a new place where we're gonna search for stuff, where we're gonna interact with each other, where we're gonna meet with each other, and I just see a lot of potential in it, and I think this is really good that people are discussing aspects like diversity and inclusion. It's just because we're at such an early stage that we still have opportunities to make the space diverse and inclusive, which is something that unfortunately hasn't been the case with the Web2 space. And this is something that I actually do with quite a lot of my clients, not only advising and educating them on how to do things properly legally, but also how to consider all of those elements and how to build ethically diverse and inclusive environment from the outside of their businesses, and just very excited about the opportunities that Web3 space has for like all of us.
It's really inspiring to have such a diverse panel with very unique background and expertise coming together to showcase their own personal journey within the space. So have you experienced any challenges when you pursue this kind of diversity inclusion agenda within the Web3 space? I wonder which panel would like to kick off first.
I mean, from a perspective, so we just did a study with BCG, and it was focused on female founders within the space, and I'm just going to read you the sad results. So 13% of all Web3 founders are by a female founder, only 10% are men and women, and only 3% have, sorry, I start again. So Web3 founders, startups that have only like 3% of companies that are exclusively female. So basically 70, almost 80% are all male teams. Then we have 10% with mixed teams, and only 3% are all female teams. And in that percentage, they receive 4 times less funding. So if you have an all-male team, they're raising 30 million, and a female team will raise 4. Anything over 100 million, 0 women have ever raised over 100 million within Web3. We represent 27% of the actual, let's say, employed. However, we're only represented in marketing and HR, not in technical. As we continue, you can see these are not great results as we're going way down. And it's kind of, it's not amusing, it's really sad considering we're having so much of these conversations in Web2, how we need to improve, how things need to get better, and then you come over to Web3 and you're already seeing a decline into it. And when you're looking at the perspective of technology not being a product, but being a story, it's time that women tell this story. We command $20 trillion. We despite 80% of all spending, we control. So if you're building products, and this is why, like, diversity is just good for business. If you're not creating a product that speaks to an end user that is a woman, what are you creating? And why are you creating it? That's the whole point of building something new. We're not, to me, it's not just the evolution of, Web3 is not the evolution of like Web2. It's not the internet. It's a mindset shift. It's a total shift in the way that we monetize, transact, and interact with consumers. That's not like a small little thing. That's a seismic movement. So you are going to need everyone participating. So what we're building needs to speak to that end user. And I would hope that, to everyone's point, we're early enough, but we definitely need to see those numbers going up. And a lot of it is just even represented in VCs. There's no female founders. There's no female lenders. It's not the same. So we need that balance.
I think that's a really valid point, yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. I think building on everything that you've so eloquently and passionately, because I know how passionate you are about all of this, and it is important, because there's no way that we will have this space and capability to move an entire world, a planet, to fully autonomous capability, to the ability for us to monetize our own data. You know, in fact, there are a couple of webs that already, cookie what? You can eat a cookie, you will no longer have cookies to click a button and that's destroyed in the next world. So what this means for us is that anything that we had going into this new space, communication challenges, I see it all the time, that even when we come in together to socialize in person or online, we are still very uncomfortable as human beings because we haven't gotten an opportunity to know one another. I think that we have allowed the same challenges with politics, no matter where you are in the world, class, no matter where you are in the world, systemic inequality. We carry it in our soul. And to be quite honest with you, technology has a soul. It is one. And whatever we decide to build and pour into it, we get it right back out. Bullying is a problem. Like never before, we're seeing higher rates of not only mental illnesses, people who are bullied so bad that then they go off and take action because we have not built to solve the problems for human beings. We're building to solve problems for things that we get a monetary reward on. So if nothing else, you said it earlier, your study, your research is all about humans. AO eloquently said this earlier about humanity. If we do not, and hear me, if we do not listen to the heart of one another, to begin to understand our experiences in a way that we are not ousted, that we are listening, then we will build differently. I've been an architect for over a decade. In cloud architecture, I sit and work with developers. I'm in front of them. I have seen models that have been built that if you sit a person of color, literally recognize it as a gorilla. This is well published. And so I have said, if we do not start to train up generations who have been left out, help them understand the power of algorithmic models, help them understand the power of what it means to have this next generation set of technologies. Screw calling it Web3. I don't care what we call this. We're screwed up. And I'm just putting it out there. I'm seeing mass shootings, mental health. We're just walking over homeless people with poverty at rates that listen. We are here to go beyond doing a deal in the room networking. We have some serious problems as human beings to get back to humanity because Web3 is a human tool. I don't have to do business with you. I don't have to give you data. So you have to get along with me in order for me to do business with you, which means that anything that you felt before you knew who I was, you've got to get to know me in order for me to help you drive revenue and drive outcomes for your business. It is a different world. So the challenges is us. And the moment that we can start to connect, to care about one another, we're going to build differently. That's my humble opinion. It'll solve a lot.
I can't agree with you more, and actually you make me feel a little bit emotional. That's beautiful, thank you. And I feel quite strongly about that, especially, this week there is a group of 350 tech leader and business leader come out and calling for all governments worldwide to looking at the serious threats caused by AI to the existence of all human beings, because they are developing too fast, they are getting smarter and smarter with each passing day. So what left out for us humans? We need to come together. It doesn't matter where you're from, what language you speak, what's your ethnicity, what's your sexuality, etc. We need to come together to really combat perhaps the biggest challenges human has ever faced in history. And this is beautiful having all of you here today. I feel very proud.
I appreciate you. We lift you up. We do. You're doing some great work at the edge. Oh, I'm so proud.
I think we can continue to do that. So Josh, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I want to build on some of these ideas as well, because I feel like I'm right there with you. But I think that there's an element of authenticity that's really important. When we do work with understanding marginalized populations, it's really important that they feel like they're represented in the technology that they're using. And that could be the queer community, it could be the Black community, it could be the disabled community. Like, they need to feel like they're a part of the experience and that the experience has been designed with them in mind. And just as like an example, on TV, it's very frequently we see like, oh, they just write in the queer friend. Like, this is my gay best friend.
Yeah.
Okay, like, great, this character was just written in. And it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, and then you also have the Black friend, you have the Asian friend. And you're like, okay, we did like all of the
tokenized friends.
Tokenized friends. And I don't want tokenization of identity. Like, I want an authentic experience. And there was actually a show on Netflix recently that apparently, sadly, didn't do too well, but it was with Neil Patrick Harris, who is gay, and it's talking about, the show is basically about him like going through a breakup in his 40s.
I love that show.
Yeah, it didn't.
It's the first show I've ever seen that's, you said that, it was a connection. I connected with every character.
And it felt like it was an authentic story. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need more of. I want to hear those stories that are coming from the people that are having those experiences.
I really love that. And actually, I forgot to mention one of my favorite movies is Wakanda. So I wonder, maybe, part of the pledge for the Web3 community is how we decentralize the cultural industry, the creative industry, to allow people with diverse backgrounds to have more voices in mainstream media, whether it's TV, movies, or short videos. They need to have a voice. And maybe that's something we can help them to do, because we can decentralize the whole finance to help them to raise funds to make their own little movies and share that with their fans. Why not? That'd be beautiful.
We first have to understand what Web3 is.
Yeah, of course.
So I feel like we sometimes are in an echo chamber of understanding, but when you leave this room and go outside on the street and someone asks me, what do you do? And I say, I work in Web3, they look at me like I have two heads. Literally, and then I say crypto, they're like, oh, the scam. So we're working against a lot of things, especially when, respectfully, against a lot of crypto bros, and when you look like me or come from my community, there's a little bit of distrust. And you're already seeing the financial models of NFTs and speculation, so everyone thinks it's a cash grab. So first, I feel like we need to have a consistent messaging of accessibility. And this panel is obviously very dedicated, but we need everyone else to be very intentional. So for these groups, they feel comfortable coming in. They feel comfortable accessing it. The language that we use, I've noticed in the last year, we've stopped using the challenging developers language, minted, wallet, all the things. They don't know what that means. And we need to be conscious and meet people where they are in their learning place. And right now, my auntie tells me, she's like, Sim, I never knew there was a Web 2. So we're talking about Web 3, and she's like, I never know there was a Web 2. So what are, like, two heads, as I said. So, no, go ahead. Just language accessibility, like, there's so many phases. I want it to be here, too, like, we're going to do this. But I think consciously, to your point, the human portion of it, people don't want to feel dumb. They want to feel like they understand, and we need to approach whatever we're doing with that mindset, because we want people to come in. And the way that you bring people in is opening your arms and letting them walk in, not telling them this is what it needs to be. because we're so precious with Web3 needs to be like this. It needs to be what anybody wants it to be. That's the whole point of blockchain. Freedom, equality, equity. Yes, yes. Perfect. Sorry.
Building on this again, I feel like what's so important from a user perspective is that we get to a place where people can use technology without having to learn it.
That part.
It should really be invisible. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Web 2 or Web 3 or what terms we call it. If people can use it without having to be educated on how to use it or what it is, it's become invisible enough for us to actually start having more mass adoption.
And I think following up on that point, this is actually one of the biggest challenges that a lot of businesses entering the space face. It's like a lack of education. Like where so many clients who come to me, I work with like a small team of the business who have this brilliant idea how for a Web2 business, they have this team who believes in a Web3 technology or any AI technology, any type of technology, who they really believe how it can revolutionize their business. But there is like three of them, and it is like a multinational company. And by the time they actually try to educate their whole team, like the whole company, like how these opportunities can actually develop their business, by that point, that idea is already either old or something, and it is really a huge issue, like with a lot of these companies, like first of all, like trying to educating them like on all of these technologies, how to actually use it, but also like how you commented on make it diverse, but authentically diverse. It's one thing to put like a person of color and say like, hey, we have like a diverse team on our board, but this is very different. And when you actually have diverse team who actually can contribute and have different ideas, and I think this is elements that a lot of businesses are actually missing. You bring diverse people to your team, not just to tick box. It brings them to actually bring you good ideas that can actually benefit your business in the long run.
And it has to be integrated. So I'll say this. I do all these workshops, and I've said, you know, we've got to disrupt the way that we even come together as a team for team building. Some things are a waste of time. I think that the traditional way of bringing a group of people together, and some conferences, where we are not in a room solving problems. I said that we're all architects. We're all now creators, every last one of us. And so what we did is I said, listen, we're not going to do the traditional, oh, hi, my name is Mary, and I can't, cool, I learned about you on LinkedIn, we're good. What we did was I said, okay, you're going to set up your first MetaMask, which is not easy for everybody to do. You're going to go, we're going to launch a metaverse, and you're going to go off, and we're going to go in, and you're going to use your MetaMask even across your wallet, across other platforms. So now what happens is education becomes the new integrated part of the way we simply come together. It is not simple, and it is not easy for people to understand even their NFT, so instead of now making education this thing that sticks out, we now make it a part of the way we all come together to ministry, fellowship, whatever we want to call it. So I just think that there are challenges, but we're no longer a humanity that can stand to be human legacy the way we used to 10, 15, even 5 years ago before COVID. We are a new humanity dealing with technology that's faster than we can adopt. So it means that when we come together, it has to be purposeful, intentional. We don't have time anymore. You said authenticity. We don't have time anymore to do the things that we used to do. And so it is important for some of these challenges, again, to get rid of our own challenges, which is our ability to disrupt our own selves so that we can all move to this new paradigm.
Absolutely, I
I love
agree.
what you said about accessibility and the portion of like, we have, so part of our company is we do a lot of metaverse integrations. We consider it edutainment. So our goal is to bring Web 2 audiences into Web 3. Our first project was Pride that we launched within Sandbox. Our goal was to ethically monetize, so the avatars were a very low price point. you could basically move through the entire ecosystem simply. That was with Sandbox, so you did have to have a wallet. There was a lot of education that was involved, and we found that while there was an adoption rate, there was still that friction. So we're now doing an experience in spatial. It's going to be the 50th anniversary of hip hop. It's going to be amazing, period, point blank. And for us, it's about bringing in these audiences. Obviously, the Black community is extremely important to me, and I want to be able to edutain. So you won't need a wallet. You won't even know that you're interacting into Web3. And that, to me, to your point, the visibility of technology is what's most important. You should just be there to enjoy. And as I'm retargeting your wallet and telling you all the things, now you're learning. Because I just got my wearable because I walked through. Dapper Dan is dropping something, I can have that piece. I bought something. Someone's there and we're listening to Rock the Bells, or whatever activations will be. Artists, like Dougie Fresh is amazing. When he's speaking, I can have a clip of that. I can stand and listen. And at no point have you heard the words Web3. And that edutainment, that's what we need to lean into. Sometimes in this metaverse, everyone's like, either side, you're either NFTs or sometimes you're either metaverse. I'm clearly team metaverse, because I feel like gaming is something we all do. It's a very easy transaction to move from gaming into a metaverse, whether that be VR, XR, if it's just augmented reality. And that, to me, is a really great way to bridge the conversation and entertain. We have to offer value. Web3 is nothing without value. AI is blowing up because it's a value. It makes my life easier, period. Web3, way too complicated. That's not helping people. So I almost feel sometimes like we need to get real silent, and when we speak, it should be about the value that we're adding back.
Oh, I'm loving that. I'm loving that.
Jeffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasm talks about how the difference between the early adopters and the mass market is that one group is okay with like fragmented experiences and putting them all together in their heads, which is the early adopters, which is this room, y'all, all y'all. And it is not the mass. Masses. Normal people cannot piece together experiences across different technologies and learn technologies in order to figure it out. Like, it has to just be seamless. And so the interoperability aspect is like super important here to get to there.
There's a graphic, actually. It's like innovators, early adopters, chasm.
Yes. That's it.
And then there's like the other side of the guy going, but why? But why? Do I want to? Because he's scared. And that's the reality. We need to find a seamless way to just keep going. And I do believe that we have the opportunity. These conversations are necessary. And I keep saying diversity is just good for business. If you have an entire group that has been disenfranchised, that literally is looking for ways in America, Black and brown communities own more crypto than white communities. LGBTQAI own. Why? They've been disenfranchised. They're understanding. We need to be speaking to these audiences. It just makes logical sense.
I agree entirely. And talking about accessibility, we all know worldwide we have a major issue of the digital divide, which means 3 billion of the population out of 8, they don't have access to the internet. So my question to the panel is, how could we use Web3 related technology to allow those people to be able to connect it and do not left behind?
Yeah, I'm on a project now where, and again, this is why strategic, we're calling them generative partnerships, where you don't have to give up equity, you don't have to give up. We're getting very creative with new agreements that allows us to build an ecosystem, especially small businesses, to go after very large deals. And so one of those, if you think about remote third world, where there are countries where there's serious, phenomenal resources available, but they can't run on blockchain. They can't run, like, we've built sophisticated models that can stream data. You can stream in real time, literally bringing in things like ChatGPT and then streaming and comprehending information in real time. Like I said, you know, I had a thing yesterday where I'm like, so what, right? So what that tech is so sophisticated that in real time now we can do natural language processing and streaming and literally take terabytes of data and process in milliseconds. It's insane, but it is exclusive. It's not for the rest of the world. So then these partnerships allow us to do things like Elon Musk has Starlink, but there are there's fiber technology. So what we did was we got on the call with a lot of other businesses who are doing, so we linked up in other countries, whether it's continent of Africa, whether it's other countries that are really suffering, parts of India that are really remote. And we started running and saying, listen, whether it's fiber, whether it's satellite communications, how can we run this blockchain technology in a remote capability on edge, taking edge devices, so devices that are not even online, and bring banking and telecommunications leveraging 5G, which 6G is on the way. So for us, again, we don't just converge technology. There has to be human convergence. Human convergence allows us to reach over on another part of the country and not just think about our own selves and say, how in the world are we going to capitalize off of 100 million or 100 million people in a whole part of a region? It meant that we had to open a sandbox and start to run new next generation technologies sitting on next generation fiber or laser communications, but we had to come together to talk so that we're talking to telecom, we're talking to small businesses, where we had to come to and entrepreneurs and startups who are completely left out of these large scale ecosystems and bring them together so that they can go off and solve large complex problems. And that's what you're talking about. We, in the past, have never been able to solve for very large, complex, global scale issues. The UN has the 17 points of sustainability, and I know we'll talk about that. Most of that is human convergence with technological convergence, with the convergence of machine intelligence and human ingenuity. Those things together are really what's going to allow us to go to remote offline areas to really do what we need to do, which is to get out of this whole thing with the world where we get a problem like the pandemic happen, parts of the world shut down, and economically because we're so interrelated, we all ended up suffering at the same level playing field because we are globalized in ways that are phenomenal, but highly interdependent. So we have to think about all those things as we are partnering together.
Absolutely.
I think the Web3 technology, like following up on Tri's great point, I think this is something that this is the first time in our history that helps us to, first of all, connect different people from around the world and provide the opportunities in a lot of developed countries when internet is still not available. And the reason why it's doing that, because first of all, like we're able to build the communities regardless of where you are. But secondly, Web3 technology started providing the opportunities for people in the communities that weren't there. So for example, it's when you live in UK, for example, for you like to access your bank account is like 5 minutes, I open a new bank account, it's not an issue. But in so many developed countries, like you either not able to open a bank account, or if you want to make international transaction, you need to go through a like very complicated SWIFT process. To a lot of countries are still not connected to this SWIFT process. And this is where Web3 and this community comes in. You have this ecosystem where it allows you to make a financial transaction, create new businesses, all together just because there is this community that supports you and helps you to do that. So the combination of this amazing technology plus the opportunity like to build this community, this is something that makes Web3 space so special.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And talking about that, we know there are 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, including education, poverty reduction, health, etc. So I wonder, how could Web3 technology help to address any of the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
So if I could circle back, because there's a company that's doing like amazing things with what you just discussed. So it's Makchankura in Africa, and you're able to basically trade Bitcoin without the internet. So it's all through like SMS and on lightning speed network. They are doing it in 6 countries now. And you're able to trade, you're able to barter. I feel like these are the types of developments that answer the question. Apple just now enabled that we can now have apps, woo, because a lot of our stuff was focused on desktop. Doesn't work. Most of the world is on global. And I think when you look at what they're doing, and I suggest everyone looks because it's really amazing, and we should be supporting projects like this, it does solve so many problems. It is easy, but we have to develop it with that in mind. And the team that developed it is obviously based in Africa, recognized and built to solve a problem, not creating more.
That's beautiful. Any other panelists?
Yeah, I want to add a point on a methodological standpoint, because the how, when we started getting into like, how does it actually happen? How do we actually learn these things? I think that it's really easy to fall into the trap of saying, we have these cool new technologies, how can we apply them? And we go back and we reverse engineer the audience and the problem that we're solving to fit these amazing technologies. And so it's important to call these technologies hypotheses and then go back and really understand the people that are using them and understand what problems they have, so that we can then start looking at how do we create and design a solution for those problems. And when I was in grad school, we always learned like, oh, just get a random sampling of a population and you're gonna kind of design for the average. So if you're looking at the bell curve, you're designing for the average person, and maybe there's one queer person, maybe there's one disabled person, maybe there's one black person, but anything that you learn from those people are gonna be an outlier. And when you say a small like qualitative sample of 10, and you're like, oh look, there's this one interesting point, but it was just one person, and everyone's like, oh, but that's just an outlier, they don't really matter. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And it's really about flipping the bell curve on its head and designing for that long tail instead of designing for the average. And so when you pick a new market, in any new market or any population or cross like subculture, suddenly you're able to gain new insights that you wouldn't get otherwise, because your sampling is different. And that actually allows you to create a different product than you would otherwise. But designing for that long tail means that you're creating new use cases, you're creating new scenarios, and you're understanding these different populations in a new way that you wouldn't otherwise. And then it creates something that is going to end up applying to everybody.
I think I wanted to add to Christina's comment about 17 UN goals, and I think what's amazing about this space is probably can contribute to the majority of them, if not all of them. I think we were just discussing economic growth and poverty and hunger and also diversity and inclusion, how the space can contribute towards them. Another element which is great is sustainable consumption, for example. We saw so many digital clothing brands coming up in this space, and I think it's like quite a controversial topic, just because by the end of the day, digital clothing will never replace our real clothing. Like, we never can see it like a naked here with like a digital representation of our clothing. But you would be surprised like how much clothing is actually purchased just to take picture on the internet and never get worn after that. So by creating this digital clothing, we are once again reducing this consumption of the stuff that probably wouldn't be. And also even on ecological side of things and carbon offsetting. I know it is a very controversial topic in the Web3 space, because we all know that use of the blockchain technology takes a lot of energy consumption. However, at the same time, there's so many amazing projects coming up in this space that help you to offset carbon, for example, and you're able to track on a blockchain like how all of this carbon is actually in real life is offset and verified. So I think what's amazing about this space, you can actually, if you look at every single point, it probably can contribute in some way into it.
Well, and then there are 17 sustainable goals. Now, again, it goes back to humanity and our intellectual energy. If the people who are creating inventions do not go out of the box, out of their relationships, friendships, and people that they know, to bring in new intellectual spirit, I call it the spirit of innovation, and to infuse in this next wave. I've sat and listened to a lot of the things that you all have said, and if we are not included, someone doesn't pick up the phone or put a LinkedIn message to say, hey, we want to get new perspectives in a way that are culturally infused. And if we don't look, I think I mentioned a story about a young lady who was handicapped and, at the airport, and I sat and she's in a wheelchair, and I had to stop and think, man, we had to walk down the steps. How in the world and she complained about how tough it was to get around the airport because the design of the airport did not include her. She was an afterthought. We can't do that going forward. In this next wave, humanity and the different ways that we all come together, we build that first. But we can't build that first if we haven't built it in the physical. So I just encourage all of us to, as we're all having our ideas and inventing these ideas, get outside your comfort zone and outside your little network. They're not going anywhere. But then you're missing an entire ecosystem of economic opportunity when you don't find folks like this and bring their ideas and infuse them into the inventions. And then there lies Web3 humanity first, right?
That's beautiful.
3 really easy ways. Don't build for the 1%. Don't build for first comers or those that only have early access. And don't build anything that requires technological savvy that the average person can't understand. 3 things.
That's good.
Really easy. Everything should look through that. Doesn't mean that you can't be a little bit exclusive in the beginning. A little FOMO works, we get it. But your long tail, what does that look like? So if you're just like PFPs, you are literally looking at 1%. Most of the holders, it's not 10,000, it's like 7 guys that own most of them. Okay, I'm being dramatic, but you get what I'm saying. That's the reason why everyone looks at Web3 and thinks we're crazy. Because it was built for 1%. We're trying to build for the 99%.
That's beautiful. So actually, that's fitting very well with my last question before we open up for some Q&A. So what are your top 3 advice to organizations who want to get involved in Web3, and where should they start?
I'm happy to start. So I think I have like 3 topics that quite nicely follow up on each other. So if you're like Web2 companies and try to get into Web3 space, I would say first of all, think why you're entering a Web3 space. If it is because of the hype, just don't do that. I think this is like really big issue of why so many Web3 companies is failing. It's just because they see like this NFT project who succeeded very quickly and they think that they will enter this space just to earn money very quickly and that's it, which is not a solution. Like Web3 technologies are so amazing and there are so many ways how you can actually use them to benefit your business. So before jumping into this space, you think like why you're entering this space, like how can you use this technology to benefit your business? Once you get that, educate your team about the Web3 technologies, and this is something what I previously discussed. If you're the only person in your company who believes in this technology, it's going to be very difficult for you to implement this technology within the business. So just do that education to people, like how do you actually, what is Web3, like how can we use it, how we can benefit our business, and then it's going to be so much easier for you to implement it. And obviously, as a lawyer, I have to make the last point, just get your legal in place. Trust me, it's going to be so much easier for you to succeed with your business if you speak to your, not just legal advisor, but also tax advisors, marketing advisors. Just get a good people on board who are going to help you to build a successful business. Just because by the end of the day, like everyone who does everything in the Web3, most of us are building businesses, just not in a Web2 place, but in a Web3 place. So once you have all of these elements together, there's much more chances that your business is going to succeed.
So I have 3 points again. So for me,
I love that.
I stick with the 3 points. Join with purpose, align your long-term vision of your company, whether it be marketing, and ensure that it's authentic to what you're creating. Dropping an NFT, dear Porsche, just because you want an NFT does not work. Build community, not consumers. Web3 is a bottom-up problem, not a top-down, and I think a lot of brands are so used to telling everyone, buy this, pushing. Web3 is not about that. It's about community. It's about collaboration. It's about connectivity. And then, of course, the last one, which is most important, and of course I've forgotten, provide value. Why are you doing this, as mentioned? What's the value to your consumer? I know a lot of people reference Starbucks. They have like the reward systems. Currently, they have a reward system. So what is the value in now doing the Web3 version? and a lot of it was artistically driven. I think that there's so much creativity out there that you can enter in a way that doesn't require hype, that doesn't require financial speculation. Just enter with purpose.
Josh?
I want to plus one on a lot of these things already. So yes, and I think that another aspect that I would add to this discussion is to ensure that you have a clearly defined audience and that you are involving them in your research and design process and development processes. Because the more that you understand who it is that you're designing for, the better the design will be. And it's an iterative process. It's not like you suddenly learn one thing and like you're good, but it's a process. And having an authentically diverse audience from the beginning as the people that you're designing for are really gonna help. Next, I would say that it is not about boiling the ocean all at once. It's not like suddenly look at every country and every market and every subgroup and culture that you possibly can. Pick one that makes sense. Understand where you're starting from, who your current users are, understand what provides them value, and then start looking to look at it more diversely. And diversity is something that can be defined in many different ways. It doesn't have to mean skin color, and a lot of times diversity doesn't mean something that you can visibly see on another person. Diversity also includes things like socioeconomic status. It includes language and culture and religion. And all of these are important aspects to be thinking about when you're looking at community.
Chris?
They've said it all so brilliantly, so brilliantly. The very first place that I start with someone, two places that you would have said, and I think you mentioned as well, Julia, is your world that you do, deeply research. The research component, people take it for granted. I am a deep researcher in a different way that you are, so I know you will understand that it is multifaceted, multidimensional, a lot of metadata that you really got to mine from many different, now with, and I hate to say it, with ChatGPT, you know, the tough part to this, I wanted to not like it. So I went into
all my
deep
questions for me today.
I literally went into deep research when it first, back in November. And now I do multiple dimensions of it because I have to help others be educated, be very careful. Now, I will say this. The algorithmic models inside, and then the NLP, NLU models that are built inside and the way that the models were trained, generative AI, it could be dangerous or it could be your best friend. Search engines will go away. I don't even know if I even use a search engine anymore now today, which is scary. But I will say this is the deeper you go into getting into the market, understanding macro factors, understanding the economics, and really getting a holistic one problem to solve. And you go off and you go so deep. There lies competitive differentiation. And therein lies when you go deep across industries to start to study the gaps, understand the macro factors, understand the micro factors, and begin to map all of that out. That is my number one guidance to everyone that, to me, that's coming into this world, is you have to go so deep because it is a competitive space. And for you to stand out, your product to stand out, you yourself have to become the problem that you're solving. You do that, and that is your first way to win inside of this space.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
One more thing.
I wonder, do we still have time for some Q&A or?
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I'm sure all our wonderful panelists will be happy to ask any questions in the networking area.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Awesome.
let's put our hands together for this amazing panel. Thank you
Hello,
so much.
moderator.